Motivated by people's stories, from their tragedies to their triumphs, and has spent many years writing the stories of those in her community as the owner and operator of the Shelburne Freelancer. Alex's passion for stories inspired her to write 2 novellas, a collection of short stories, 3 picture books, and is in the middle of writing her 3rd short novel with her co-author Miles the cat. So without further ado, we'll turn it over to Alex, who will give us a little bit of a presentation, a bit of a background about all of her books, which are featured behind her, and what inspires her, and then we'll flip over to our Q&A. Thank you, Alex.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining us. This is really special. I'm a little nervous, so I hope you don't mind. I wanted to go into a little bit about my books. The Memoirs of Mrs. Olivia Foxworthy and Always Olivia are pretty much 2 of my favorite books. They were my first short novellas, and they were just very inspirational. I don't want to, in today's climate, I'm a little nervous, of course, about racism, and there is a little bit of a religious undertone to these books. And I was really hoping to speak to the audience about characters and how important it is that when a character is created, especially one like Olivia, and the type of novel that it is, where she's expressing her memoirs, it's very important to me not to over-edit, not to make things exactly grammatically correct, but to instead keep it in line with exactly what your character is trying to say to you. And in that way, I just feel that it becomes very personal and very real. You tend to really identify with this character, this person, as if you've actually met them, sat down, and spent time with them. Now, that being said, if you get a chance to read my books, which I hope you do, I'd really appreciate it. I have to stress that there is no one person named Olivia Foxworthy, even as real as she does feel. And I get it because she feels real to me. She and her family and her experiences are so real that sometimes I wonder, and I say to myself, what would Olivia do in this situation? Or I wish I was as great a person as Olivia is, because she's just a lovely, wonderful person. And I think that if you imagine her story as a historical story, not a factual story, it is complete work of fiction, you'll realize that it's just a wonderful account of something that she felt dear that happened to her in her own life. And they are short novellas, kind of like adult chapter books. And they're just easy to read, easy to fall in love with, and they're short. A lot of people don't have a lot of time for these books, but a lot of people feel so moved. They get the real feeling like they've been through this experience, like a movie or something. And that's what I hope to do, is to reach people, make them feel engaged, and then those experiences then become so real to them it's part of their own literary experience, if you will, but often something that they can keep in their own minds and hearts. I've also put together, so that's Olivia Foxworthy, but I've also put together a collection of short stories, and I didn't realize until I put them all in the same book that they actually revolve around death. That sounds a little bit morbid, but the catchphrase for the book is, let me just reach here, death can't be all bad, because there's a lot of little stories in there, very different styles from Always Olivia and the Memoirs of Olivia Foxworthy, completely different styles. And even in the short stories themselves, I engage the story as if it's almost like different movies that you've seen, or that kind of real life experience. So the style is almost like it isn't just me writing it, it's very many different authors almost. And I take a lot of pride in that. You can see behind me as well, speaking of different styles, I've written 3 children's books and I illustrated them as well. They're very fun books. They make kids laugh. There are a lot of happy feelings, and that's the thing I like. There's not really big fat lessons to learn or anything traumatic to deal with. It's a lot of just enjoy yourself and have a good experience. I know that some people think that writing can be an escape, but for me, it's a comfort. It really is almost like an addiction. I have to do it. And for a number of years, I own and operate the Shelburne Freelancer. It's an online newspaper that I've put on hold. I still keep it up so you can go and check out past photos and past stories. It's still online, but I'm not doing it actively because I'm pursuing the writing. And I just have to stress that that newspaper covering people in Shelburne, Ontario, their stories, it's such a wonderful little town. And even though it's growing, I value my experience meeting all Shelburnites so much. I've made some very good friends here. The people stories that I did and posted in the news were very emotional for me. It was beautiful for me to have that human exchange and tell their stories and feature them and share their memories and take videos of their families and friends, especially our veterans. And all of these things are very useful experiences because I pay close attention to what people were telling me. And oftentimes telling a story, sharing a story gets emotional for the one who's telling it. And while I'm listening, I try very hard to communicate that to readers. So I've had a lot of experience with listening and providing empathetic vernacular, I guess, or words, just sharing it in a way that can really help people engage in it and appreciate other people's stories. It's really an important thing when you're a reporter to tell someone's story as accurately as you can. And everybody that I met doing the Freelancer here in Shelburne had an important thing to say. I didn't find anybody who didn't have a great story to tell from their lives. Everybody has a story to tell. And that being said, brings me to another tangent. Those of you out there who, I hope you read one of my books, and if you're inspired to write, I say do it. Put it down on paper, let it stew for a little bit. You might have to walk away for a while, come back, do it again, and just get it out. It takes a lot of courage. The words and put on paper are very powerful things. They can make a person cry. It's just an amazing human attribute to communicate with words, but when you put it on paper, other people can feel your pain, share your experience, and it even can become somehow more real. Even if it's like mountain climbing or a town who had a devastating fire or something like that. But if you live through an experience and it's important to you, it's your life, just remember that it's your story and you can tell it. You can tell it how you want and how you feel you should tell it. And that's where editing is very, I don't rely on it very much because I just find that if you over edit, and especially with a book like the Olivia's, you can really take away from the experience of the person who's got that experience to tell. And it's an unfair process to your characters that you create. So I although I like spelling check and things like that, I would really recommend telling your story the way you want to say it, because it's important and it should be said in your own words. And if you need to clean it up, if you're uncomfortable with some things, that's okay. But just really just get it out and do it if you want to. So I hope you feel inspired after this, and hopefully maybe I'll get to read one of your books one day. That would be fine. That would be really great. I'm just going down my list here. Oh, I have to explain my pen name. My full name is Kimberly Alex McClellan. And the reason I use a pen name of Alex McClellan is it's simple and complicated. Unfortunately, it is still kind of a man's world, and I was lucky enough to be born with that middle name. It's my real name, and I really like the name, so I use it. And I find men in particular will likely read one of my books if it's by Alex McClellan compared to Kimberly. So that's, and also in the newspaper, I really like using Alex because sometimes, you know, you have to separate a professional life from your personal life. And so for friends and family, I'm Kimberly, and it's a nice little separation. But I love using my name Alex. Then when I started to do children's books, I was doing some investigation. I found that adults who might like deadly shorts, for example, which can be a little bit on the morbid, gruesome side, do not want to read a book by Alex McClellan at nighttime to their children, even if it is cute. So I borrowed from my real name again, and I just wrote books by Kimmy for children. And so far, so good. Kids seem to like it. They seem to remember it. They can actually say it, even little ones. So that's another thing that's fun. And oh, I forgot to mention that in the kids' books, at the end of the books, I've created some coloring book pages because I find if you date them, they become keepsakes. And you can even photocopy them before you get coloring if you have more than one child. And then you can save those pictures, and it's just extra fun for them. I'm not sure what I should be doing now. I think
with a question, Alex.
Oh, okay, thank you.
So when we were chatting previously, you shared a quote with me, and I'll just read it.
Oh, thank
I
you.
write because I have to write. Writing is a compulsion for me, an addiction, an inexplicable power stealing the imagination, creating a doorway into another world where anything can happen. Who, if given a choice, would not choose to live in such a world? So it sounds like writing, much like reading for many of us, is an escape. It's an opportunity to leave this world to explore another world. And I wondered what it must feel like when you're done writing these novels, especially with the Olivia series where you're developing these characters. And when the story does come to a close and the characters and their stories are no longer taking up that mental space, how does it feel? And is that maybe why a second book does come? Because the characters aren't finished yet and that it requires another novella.
Absolutely. I noticed with this re-editing process, this is the second edition of both of those books, the Memoirs of Olivia Foxworthy and Always Olivia. So I was able to revisit them after many years. And when I was finished, and when you edit, I like to read out loud. And when I'm doing it, I'm immersed in the story. Around the room are my characters. They're with me. The people I meet are so real in my mind. I'm not saying a bomb could go off and I wouldn't notice, but it would be pretty close. A lot happens and I'm just in the zone. And I really miss spending time with these wonderful characters. I thought, oh, I could live somewhere like this. It was amazing. And it makes me a better person because a lot of these characters in these books are just so beautiful and wonderful people. Like I wish I did know them in real life. And at the end of the book, it was like, oh, I'm a little lonely. I was actually lonely for all my pretend friends I created in these books. And it was, it's really daunting. I have heard that some people who are in theater experience that after a long stint with a production. And I get it. I was very lonely for some of these characters. So yeah, that happens a lot.
And speaking of characters, I know that developing your characters and giving each of them an authentic voice is very important to you, and making sure that voice remains throughout the story, and especially with the memoir format. And that made you conscious of how much you were editing and all of that because you really wanted that voice to sound authentic and genuine, just like we were talking to a friend. So if you can speak a bit more to how you developed those character voices, and then maybe a bit as to why you chose the memoir format for the Olivia series.
Well, for the Olivia series, I wrote a short story. I love the narrative, to write in a narrative and in a voice. And in creating that voice, I created the person telling the story. And then comes in my imagination the whole schlemazel. Now I have the person. I could tell you what kind of hair she has, how she walks. Is she funny? Is she pleasant? Does she wear strong perfume? I mean, I go through the whole schlemazel. And um, in my family, my own grandmother was very, very special. She was a little bit of an icon, I would say, to our family. And I really missed her. And I thought to myself, if she had left her memoirs, if I found her memoirs, and she had a French accent, she was a little bit French, and if somebody found how she had written things with her own idiosyncrasies and little expressions, would I really want an editor to come along and change something, like how she said hello, or if she said, I'll be seeing you some of these days? Would I want them to say, I'll be seeing you one day, or, over edit? It would really be disrespectful to the person. And I think not over editing is crucial to create a wonderful character.
Wonderful, thank you. Your books are so different. You have a variety of genres. So you have the Olivia series, then you have the deadly, more spooky short stories, and then you have children's books. Which one did you start with, and do you have a favorite or a genre that you tend to lean to, or do you really just enjoy kind of dabbling in all of them?
I have to say I enjoy dabbling in all of them. And I do get a little bit obsessed with finishing them in different genres, and I find history is just a beautiful thing to fall into, even though this book is not factually based. It's I have a voracious mind. I like a lot of different things. I like to be influenced by a lot of things, even if it's uncomfortable for me. I love to stretch my brain and just delve into things. It can be kind of weird for the deadly shorts, for example. Even shopping, sometimes after writing something creepy, you tend to look at things differently, and you have to really remember to, as an author, I'm sure other people can relate to this. I was shopping in Walmart, and I'm just thinking, after writing Deadly Shorts, and even in the middle, I'm thinking, I'm looking at this big tote, and I was thinking, wow, I think I could put a body in that. And you can't say these things out loud. You can really get involved. And then at the same time, I can really enjoy writing a kid's book and enjoy the laughter, and kids say the darndest things and all of that. I really love doing all of it, and I love to be influenced by all of it. And I think it helps because I attract different readers, readers that never thought they'd like to read Olivia, for example, and then they find something they relate to the point where they think it might even be one of their own family memories that I somehow found out and exposed.
Mm. So it sounds like you're a really keen observer of, your environment and the people, and, maybe inspired by all of the work you did as a journalist and with capturing people's stories, and that you kind of take bits and pieces of different lives and different experiences or different things you see, and that helps form these stories and these ideas.
Yes, I do that. Even driving, I'll see a house and I'll wonder, well, who lived there? I wonder what their story was. I bet that house that now looks dilapidated had a story, a family, a history. And I kind of wish I could have a special like sci-fi camera to take a peek and see what life was like, like, did a kid have a swing there, or did they have animals, or this. And Shelburne is beautiful for that. This area is awesome for that. And the Olivia, the Memoirs of Olivia, was actually, the cover was shot in mono. It's just so beautiful here. How could I not take advantage of this place? And it's important to notice things. That way you can be empathetic. If somebody's telling you something, you can really dive into it and then draw on that experience when you're writing.
So before we jump into a reading of the Olivia series, do you want to share, you've shared a little bit about what has inspired you, but are there any writers or other authors or even favorite books that have inspired you to write?
Well, I have to go with Jane Austen, is my ultimate favorite author. For this person, she was exceptional in my mind. She could really, really delve into characters and men or women, which I also try to do very faithfully. I like all the characters to be very unique and accurate and truthful. And I find, is everything okay?
Yep, we can still hear you.
Oh, okay. Yeah, and I really love her. And I also love Oscar Wilde, who I think is a genius. His writing is exceptional. He was so intelligent. I really enjoy that tongue-in-cheek aspect of him. And so I take influences all over the board. I love so many different people. Margaret Atwood, wow. Amazing.
And those classics, which, they really stand the test of time. Despite how long ago they were written, they're still, people are still reading them and getting inspired by them.
I can only hope that one of my stories makes it to that degree. That would be such an honor. That's exactly what I shoot for, timeless. And I know I'm not the greatest salesperson for the books because I've given away a lot of them. But my whole joy in writing too is to move somebody, to give them an emotional experience. It thrills me. It really does. And so people say, oh, I bet you need this or do that for sales. And I know I should be probably more aggressive with that, but to read the books, I'm more emotional. I'm more really invested in that.
Well, can you do a reading for us then?
Yes. I will take an excerpt out of Always Olivia, which is a teaser for the third book, which will be called Olivia's Nana Gray. I'm not certain when I will get to that. I have a couple other projects before that. But this will give you a little bit of a taste into the book. But as an author, if you're anything like me, not one chapter is identical to the other chapter. So even though this has a little bit of a feel to it, and it's the book's tone that I think will get you. So this is called Nana Gray and My Inside Outside Face. When we are young, we see more clearly than any other time in our lives. Everything that happens to us is certainly the worst, the best, the scariest, or the most ever. All of those first experiences can help shape us or can help hurt us. Nana Gray had a way about her, plain and simple. She once told me she got her name because she had a patch of gray hair when she was born, right in the front, about the size of a thumb, and it stayed with her for the whole of her life. To say I love Nana Gray doesn't come close to the gratitude and appreciation I feel as an adult. Also, I miss her, and I love her dearly to this very day. Gray came to love and care for me when I was just a child. If ever there was a child who needed a grandmother and a woman who needed a grandbaby, it was Gray and myself. That's how Gray became Nana Gray. She helped me make it through when I was so devastated, broken-hearted over Jedediah, and I don't know what would have happened without her intervention. Divine it may have been, if you dare to believe in such things. Back then we had a double-seater swing in the front of our house on the veranda, and me and Nana Gray passed many hours figuring. That's what we called it anyhow. Nana Gray, Mama says your kind don't go to our heaven. I've been figuring. Uh-huh, Nana Gray always said that during our figuring talks. Well, I'd like to know if you and I will meet again someday up in heaven. And since you're so old, I expect you'll get there first. Uh-huh, I see. Nana Gray raised one eyebrow. Not like I'd be wanting you to rush anything along, 'cause I reckon you're not that old. Suppose we stop talking about my oldness, maybe, and get on to the figuring part. Nana smiled and pulled me closer. We both sat back and looked out into the sky as we swung in that chair. Well, it makes me sad what Mama said, and I can't imagine God being so bored he made two heavens. I reckon you're right, child. Nana saw a bit of a tear in my eye. Now don't you be wearing your inside-outside face another minute, young one. Nana Gray always said my outside face gave away what my insides were feeling. Well, when we went to old Johnny Post's funeral? Uh-huh. I saw the outside of him go right into the ground. That's right. Nana wondered what I was thinking. Well, he was one of you, Mama says. I guess, if that's how you see things. Then we went to Miss Lucy's funeral, and according to Mama, Miss Lucy, well, she was one of us, and her outside went right into the ground. I was really watching hard like, Nana. I saw the whole thing. That's about the size of it, Olivia. That's just how things get done. Well, I did me some figuring, and I think I'm really onto something. Uh-huh. Nana seemed intrigued. Nana Gray, if we are all of us down here putting everybody's outsides into the ground, what gets to go to anyone's heaven? I figure only everybody's insides get to go to heaven. So, how do you suppose God sends your folk one way and my folk another way? If there's no outsides to be seen, how does God know what's what and who's who? What the heck is going on up there in anybody's heaven? My, you have been doing a lot of figuring. Maybe only what is on the inside matters to God, Sweet Pea. And maybe that's why what's inside a person matters so very much in this world and the next. I figure you and me are right about this, and I reckon there are a lot of people surprised when their insides make it up to heaven and they see what's really going on when they have no outsides to think about. We laughed and laughed. I'd best be pretty good inside my whole life, Nana Gray. That's a very good idea. Also, I was figuring, my Lord, there's more? Well, I was figuring you're so old you had a lot of years to get your insides in order. But if I kick it tomorrow and I get the chance to go first, I'm a little worried my insides are not as good as they should be to get into heaven. So how will I get there to be waiting for you? Surely that's where you'll be going, where me and Jedediah will be going, and Aunt Ruth, and I want to be with all of you. Nana Gray held me as we stared out into the sky. Child, you got the best inside, strong and true. We'll see each other again one day. You ain't got nothing to worry about as long as you fill your insides up with good every day. You got that? Yes, ma'am. Does filling up with good food count? I declare all this figuring's giving me an appetite, Nana Gray. Child, I can't keep up with you. You're a grown concern. God knows I love you. I liked it when Nana Gray said that because she would always hug me right after. Hope she has a great big swing chair waiting for me and her up in heaven. And also, I hope there's plenty of blue sky to help us with all our figuring. Olivia Foxworthy, May 13th, 1944. So this would be adult Olivia writing one of her dear childhood memories down in the book. And so the emotional part, I hope you got. I hope you enjoyed. Thank you.
Thank you, Alex. I mean, there's something magical when you actually hear an author read their work. And I don't know, it just helps you envision it all in your head. And I could really picture Nana Gray and Olivia as the child. And even in that short passage or that short chapter, we get a sense of their characters. I was left wanting to know more about them. And I think it also inspired all of us to probably make sure our insides are very good.
Actually, that's one of the things I've had feedback from people, every walk of life, every nationality, all different. Everybody seems to have a very clear idea of what the environment looks like, about what people look like, the settings. And they're all very similar to each other's idea, even though I don't go into very much descriptive detail of that. So I feel there's something special about these books in particular. Thank you for that. That's really nice of you.
Yeah, no, thank you. And I think if that's okay with you, Alex, we'll open the floor to see if any of our listeners have any questions that they would like to ask. And just a reminder, folks, that you're welcome to type your questions into the chat and then I'll read them out to Alex, or you're welcome to turn your cameras on and unmute yourselves and ask Alex yourself. So just while you're thinking of some questions, we do have one come through from Amelia, and they are asking, what are you currently writing and what can we look forward to reading next?
I am currently writing this one, Carlia in Your Dreams. It's a vampiress.
Oh.
Also very different from the other works. And I'm having a lot of fun with it, a lot of tongue-in-cheek, a lot of violence. It's not something, I don't know if you're faint of heart that you want to read. But I'm really enjoying that, and I'm hoping to get that done in the next few months. Thank you for asking the question.
Excellent. So we'll just see if there's any more questions coming through. You did mention briefly before about your picture books and that you also illustrated them. And I wonder if you wanted to just bring one a bit closer to the camera so everyone can see them.
Yes.
And with your picture books, do you find your ideas for the illustrations come first, or does the story come first?
The story comes first, often from poetry that I've written for kids. This was a poem I wrote, and I wrote it when my own kids were very small. And it's a funny story about a frog who decides he'd like to be a bird and fly. And so he puts on a beak and gives it a try. And it's pretty cute story, and it's a little bit about, you know, aspirations and not giving up your dreams and just to keep trying things. A lot of times if you don't know what you can't do, you get to discover a lot about yourself and what you can do. And that comes into part with people telling other people, oh, you'll never do that, you can't do this. And this is just a fun way for kids just to see about a bird, and did the frog learn to fly? And also in this book, I got to have a dog tell the story about the frog that he meets when he was walking down the street. And again, with accents and character building to help parents, I write right in the middle, right in the front pages, that you can try a British accent for the frog and a country western accent for the dog, because the poetry flows better. But if parents need an idea on how to do things, it's fun. And then if you get the accents wrong, that's fun too. And yeah, and I really had a lot of fun doing this because, as you can see, the frog's expression is pretty funny. He doesn't want to be a frog, and he doesn't care if you want him to be something else. So he's a really one of my favorite characters so far.
And there really is a trend right now. We're seeing it in children's books where the stories are about, being positive and being yourself and encouraging children to have a voice and, to be kind to others. And then we're seeing another trend at the same time to where the stories are becoming more interactive and getting the children involved in the stories. And I think you've done both with your picture books.
Yes, actually, this book this one up here is it's an activity book. And it's all about things that you can do, like put your head on the floor and pretend you're a mop. And if you want it to be more fun, parents can do it with kids, which makes kids like have a true guffaw. They fall on the floor laughing. And they could be a kangaroo. And when you want to get to the end of the book, if you have the option, first read it slow the first time, and then the second time read it quicker. the third time read it really fast. So it's almost like exercise for kids. So they have a lot of fun, and it just ends up being like a bunch of laughter for the kids because they could never do it as fast as you're saying things, and they just laugh and bump into each other and have like just a lot of fun. So yeah, I like to do that. I like to be very positive about things, and even for Jeremy's Monster, that's this book up here. Oh, yeah. I'll try to reach it. Oh, maybe I should just turn around. Okay. Jeez, make things difficult. So Jeremy's Monster is about a little boy who is trying to sleep in his parents' room. He's a little bit scared. He just wants to be with mom and dad. And he creates a plan that will end up getting his parents to sleep with him. Because really, it's his monster all along. It's not a real monster. And the monster works for him. And eventually he gets his own way because his parents get to sleep with him. They squeeze into his bed so they'll get some sleep. So it's win-win. It's just, and it's also positive and it's a fun story. So kind of puts kids in charge. I like that. It always felt like my little ones were in charge a lot too. So
yeah. And it's getting them to get excited about reading and all the fun that can come from a story when you teach them how to make the story come alive, which is so important.
Yes, exactly. And just that interaction is so important from person to person, and it gets kids involved and it helps to build memories, and imagination I find is lacking nowadays. I find a lot of books and games especially are just lacking imagination for kids. It's just telling them what to do and living that thing that you're telling them to do instead of coming up with their own ideas. And that's crucial for development, I find, and I like to inspire that if I can.
And Marion has asked a question. How do you know when a book is finished?
That's a tricky part. I I don't have a proper process. I shouldn't say proper process. My process is a little different, I've discovered from other authors. And I think a book is finished when personally, I get a little choked up. And the ending is so powerful that even if it's not the real ending, because if it's a life story, life goes on. But if it's the ending of that experience in particular, that book that you're writing, you'll know. You get a feeling about it. Like, wow, that's the best thing. And if it was a movie, I would be so happy about it right now. I would be like, yep, that was the perfect ending for that movie. And sometimes making it, imagining it as a movie can really be a lifesaver when you think you don't know about your own ending. And I just really rely on that feeling and experience to end a story. You could go on and on and on, but would it be something? And if you are an avid movie lover, which I am also, you've noticed some movies go on and on and on because they can't end it.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah.
I hope I answered.
So you're really imagining it from the reader's perspective then, and saying it's not so much about it, I guess it becomes about the reader and how they're enjoying the story and when it should wrap up, and just like a movie. Because yes, we've definitely all been there where a movie keeps going or we feel like a book has maybe dragged on longer than it needed to. So trying to think of it from the reader's perspective when you're wrapping up your story.
I find that really helps. It really does help. And I also am the reader and the writer. So if it doesn't suit me in the experience department, it's not the right ending. And you always know because you go, yes, like, yes, that makes perfect sense. All the pieces fall into the puzzle. And then you have your ending that satisfies you as a reader.
Right. Lynn and Kirk have just shared, they don't have a question, but they just wanted you to know that it was a happy and emotional story and that they think your writing is wonderful.
Thank you so much, guys. That's really something. Thank you. Yeah.
And just while we're waiting, it looks like we have another question coming in. Oh, I think it is there. Oh, this is Leslie sharing. Sorry, I have to leave, but thank you for your presentation. I love the sound of your picture books, and I'm going to check them out, and maybe I can use them at a future story time, especially the I Can, which sounds like so much fun. And Leslie, I know Alex and I were chatting about this previously too, that we would love to have her come back in some way to connect with our younger patrons and do sort of an interactive read aloud with them.
I would be so happy to do that. That's a lot of fun for me. Thank you.
She has a great idea. She loves that idea. All right, if there are any more questions, please feel free to type them into the chat. Otherwise, I think that might be it, Alex. I just want to thank you so much. I know it takes so much courage to not only, first to write your stories, but then to present them to everyone and to put yourself out there. And I think it was wonderful, and it's always such a treat as a reader to hear from an author and hear the inspiration behind their stories and all of the thought process that goes into it. And then I hope, yeah, for you to hear back from the readers is a wonderful journey as well.
Oh, well, thank you so much. This was a great opportunity for me. I was very nervous. So thank you. And thank you to everyone who joined in. It was a very special time for me. Thank you.
And we do have Alex's books available at the library. We have the Deadly Shorts and her picture books. And I believe we're getting the Olivia series. So we'll have all of those books available to borrow. But Alex, should they want to buy your books, how can they go about doing that?
All the books are available on Amazon. Cobwebs and Caviar has some. You can borrow them at the Shelburne Public Library, as well as Booklore has them. Yep. So local bookstore in Orangeville has them. And I think they come in just like a couple days when you order online. So it's pretty easy, but even easier is Booklore. So if you're in Orangeville.
And then the Shelburne one, what was that called? Sorry?
The Shelburne store, Cobwebs and Caviar.
Okay, excellent.
Yeah. That's a wonderful little gift store we have in town, and the owner was gracious enough to accept my books. So that was very nice of her.
Wonderful. Alrighty, well, thanks again, and thank you to everyone for joining us this afternoon. We hope you'll join us for our next storytelling series, which is on June 14th at 1:30, and we'll be featuring another local author, Don Scallon, who writes for In the Hills, and he'll be talking about his book, Nature Where We Live, and we'll share ways for all of us to connect with our local wildlife.
Wow, that sounds great. I might even have to join that myself.
I hope you do. Thank you, everyone.
Very much.
Have a nice afternoon.
You too.
Bye.
Bye.